Hello guys, I'm Ashley Thomas and here are my top 5 DC Cinematic Universe movies so far. There have only been 5. We got Aquaman just around the corner. That's released not next week, the week after I believe. So I'm really looking forward to Aquaman. Aquaman has received a lot of positive early reactions on social media from people that have already seen the movie. So, I am really looking forward to Aquaman. I love the trailers. It has that sort of 80s sort of fun fantasy action movie look about it, like He-Man, for example. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I love the new poster that they've just dropped. I think it looks beautiful. And again, I get that sort of 80s fantasy vibe from it. And so yeah, I got faith that James Wan have done a good job with Aquaman. And I'm really looking forward to it. It doesn't always mean the film is going to be good because we are having early positive reactions from social media, because that, we've experienced this in the past, and the actual film itself, when they have come out, haven't haven't been quite as good, you could say. Okay, so enough about Aquaman. Let's do my top 5 favourite DC Cinematic Universe movies, and we'll start with the one that I dislike the most. In fact, I really dislike this movie. It was a massive, crushing disappointment. So let's start with number 5. And number 5 is Justice League. Yeah, Justice League for me was a crushing blow. It was a crushing disappointment. Really, Justice League should have been at the top of the list. It should have been 1, maybe 2. But no, it was, it was nothing what I wanted it to be. It should have been amazing and epic. It just wasn't. It was a very bland, sterilized experience, Justice League. It felt a little bit like a piss take. We all know sort of roughly what went on behind the scenes. There were reshoots, and it just felt like, in a way, that Joss Whedon was taking the piss out of us, out of the fans that were actually liking and enjoying what Zack Snyder was doing. There were characters did a lot of things that I didn't expect certain characters to do, mainly Batman. There was Batman grinning like an idiot in one scene, and he just looked so out of place and forced. For me, it was sort of tonally, it was just a little bit all over the place. It didn't sort of fit into what we were used to when it came to Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. And if you've seen my videos from the past, you will know I personally didn't think that tone was actually an issue when it came to these movies. But you could tell they did this massive course correction, or they attempted this course correction, and it was a little bit obvious, and the film, as a result, for me, suffered. It was just had no soul. It was fuzzy, it was light. You could tell they just sort of went in there and they wanted to try and Marvelize it. And look, every time I say that, I don't want people to think that I'm actually taking a dig at Marvel, because what Marvel do, they do it well. I mean, I enjoy all the Marvel movies, and there's a few of them that I love. And what they're doing with Marvel works for Marvel, but I don't want DC to try and recreate that, as they did, I felt, with Justice League, because as a result, we just had a very sort of soulless, dull experience. Yeah, Justice League for me just felt very empty and just unsatisfying, and it just didn't fit in with what Zack Snyder started out with Man of Steel. So yeah, a massive disappointment for me, and that's Justice League at number 5. Number 4. Now, when it comes to this particular movie, it was sort of, I regarded it as a similar sort of level as Justice League, as in they had a lot of sort of reshoots go on. There was a lot of trouble behind the scenes in trying to sort of make the movie a little bit lighter and sort of just pleasing for the masses, you could say. And that movie is Suicide Squad. Now, with Suicide Squad, it's obvious there were reshoots. Very obvious, because it is a mess of a movie. When it comes to tone, it is like it's just all over the place. It's almost as if it's like you're watching two movies and you have this sort of darker movie underneath the sort of the light and underneath the sort of lighter version. So the theatrical version that you watch, or the only version that you can watch, underneath that you could see that there was this other movie. You see glimpses of that other movie, but when it came to Justice League, very similar issues. But with Justice League, it was a much more consistent viewing experience. You didn't really sort of see the reshoots. The reshoots didn't stick out with Justice League. With Suicide Squad, they did. But the thing with Suicide Squad was it was an enjoyable movie. I enjoyed it so much more than Justice League. I was a little bit disappointed by it because it was nothing like what the trailers were promising. I will always remember that first trailer. I loved it. And it seemed to promise us this gritty, dark story within this DC universe they were creating with Harley Quinn and the Joker. That first trailer had that sort of Seven vibe about it. The movie directed by David Fincher, Seven. It had that sort of really dark grittiness to it, and I was sort of hoping for something like that. But when we actually got the film, it was completely different. You could see they'd gone in. It was very obvious they'd reshot moments and jigged things around, changed things around with the editing. So even though Justice League held together as a whole, Suicide Squad doesn't quite manage that. But it was just a much more enjoyable experience. Great performances, to be honest with you. It was it's in a way it's a disappointing movie because you've got these great performances by Will Smith, Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She was amazing. I did enjoy Jared Leto's performance as the Joker. It's not my favourite performance or portrayal of the Joker, but I liked what Jared Leto did. So overall, the performances were really good. It's just disappointing that the film overall was just not what they were promising, and it was a bit of a disappointment. But it was fun and it was enjoyable. With Suicide Squad, nothing felt cohesive, nothing sort of flowed smoothly, and it just felt like a montage of cool action scenes with sort of famous music played up over the top. So it was almost like 2 hours of music videos, you could say. Like I say, cool action scenes. This does have some cool, exciting action moments within the movie, but overall I was quite a bit disappointed with it. But yeah, Suicide Squad is in at number 4. So we now come towards the top 3, and for me personally, there was a bit of a leap in terms of quality and sort of a satisfying viewing experience when it comes to these top 3 compared to the bottom 2. So we've got Justice League and Suicide Squad, but then when it came to the top 3 in my list, in terms of sort of standards and quality, they're much better movies, I thought. And so it was actually tough to choose my top 3 here. Really tough actually. So yeah, they're all sort of, for me, they were pretty close. But in at number 3, it's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. A very misunderstood movie and a very underrated movie. A very ambitious movie. Zack Snyder was attempting a lot within this movie. I'm not surprised that apparently, if it's true, that there is a 4-hour version of this movie out there. I would love to see it. If you have not seen Batman v Superman before, please check out the extended edition. I believe it's called the Ultimate Edition. It throws in another 30 minutes and it just makes the experience a lot more fluid, a lot more smoother. The narrative, the story runs a lot more smoother and makes a bit more sense. But you can still see there's just an awful lot going on. But I liked it. There was a lot of deep themes within this movie. I just love what Zack Snyder was trying to do. I just feel like one of its downfalls was that Zack Snyder was attempting a little bit too much. We do get the introductions to the characters that will eventually be part of Justice League. I felt like that was unnecessary. And just the way that sort of happens in the film almost feels like Zack Snyder wasn't particularly interested or keen in it. Perhaps I'm wrong, perhaps that's just me. But I really liked Batman v Superman. I found it, it's quite an emotional movie. I really, really enjoyed it. I do feel like it's a movie that maybe should have happened later on within this sort of timeline of what they're trying to do or what they're trying to attempt with the DC Cinematic Universe. I've always said, if you've seen any of my previous movies, you'll know that I believe they should have taken on what Marvel did, and that was start off with standalone movies. So we should have had a Wonder Woman, a Batman, an Aquaman, a Cyborg, before eventually having a Batman and Superman movie, then Justice League, or I do feel like we should have had that bit of a build up, and I think the overall movie may have been better and more satisfying, and probably would have been higher up in my list. But for what we got, I actually really dug what Zack Snyder was doing. So yeah, that's Batman v Superman at number 3. Now this was really tough. You got to choose between the top 2, but in at number 2, it's Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I can't imagine anyone else playing Wonder Woman now. She is amazing in this film. Her performance, I don't hear enough people praising or read enough people praising her performance in this movie. What she did with the character, she really made you believe in this character. I loved what she did. It was a fun movie. I liked the humour, even though the humour in it was a little bit Marvel. I just enjoyed it. And even the villain. Now, a lot of people complained about the villain and compared it to Marvel villains. I could kind of see where people were coming from. But actually, what they did with this villain in Wonder Woman, it worked for me. It worked with what the villain was, who he was, what he stood for. The way they sort of introduced this villain into the story, and how this villain how he came about, how his role, the villain's role within this movie, I just really liked it. It just made sense. So I do disagree when people say that Wonder Woman had a weak villain, because I don't think so. I just think the way they went about it, and how they wanted this villain to exist within the story, and how it played out, and when you get all the twists and turns, I think it suited what the villain is, what the villain is all about, and I just think it all worked, and it was emotional. Like Batman v Superman, it really pulls on the heartstrings. It has a big heart, and I loved it. I loved Wonder Woman. And in at number 1 is the first movie that sort of kickstarted the DC cinematic universe, and it's Man of Steel. Yep, Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. I adore this movie. I think it's one of the best superheroes made. It's definitely I would say it's definitely in my top 10 superhero movies without a doubt. Potentially top 5, in fact. I just loved what the movie was all about. The themes that Zack Snyder was exploring when it comes to finding yourself in the world, and accepting yourself, and just hope for humanity, and humanity sort of struggling to fight his way through the darkness. All of that sort of stuff that I felt like was sort of touched on within this movie. I just loved what Man of Steel was all about. And for me, I do think Man of Steel is a very misunderstood movie. Like Batman v Superman, I think it's a very irrelevant movie, even more now than ever with what's going on around the world. When it comes to themes like hope for humanity, and humanity trying to fight its way through the darkness, there's a scene in this movie that for me encapsulated what this movie was all about. Now, yeah, we've got Superman's story about sort of finding himself in this world, and trying to find himself and all of that. And I loved that. I could really connect to the character and hope. And the fact that there is out of all the evil that goes on around the world, there is that good that exists. And for me, hope is what this movie is all about. And there's a particular moment that really encapsulates that, I felt like. And there was a moment with Lawrence Fishburne's character, Perry White, and it's when we've got the terraforming machines just battering the earth, and the cities falling to pieces. And instead of running off and leaving one of his employees under all the rubble, his friend, his employee is gonna die, and he knows this, but instead of running off to save his own skin, he stays there and he holds his hand. And that was such a powerful moment within the movie for me. I tear up every time I watch that moment. And at the same time, you've got Superman at the other side of the planet about to destroy this terraforming machine, and that entire scene, that moment for me encapsulated what this movie was all about. I loved it. I really enjoy Man of Steel. Like I said, it's a very underrated movie, a very misunderstood movie. It has a lot of sort of themes and messages running underneath all the action, because there is an incredible amount of action in this movie. The third act, a lot of people complain that there was too much distraction. I actually thought it made sense. And, you know, Superman is just he's finding how to use. He doesn't quite know how to use his powers yet. He doesn't know how to use his powers to the full potential, and it just sort of, everything that happens within this movie for me made sense. I could see where people were coming from, but when I watched the movie, I didn't see that. I seen it in sort of a different view. So yeah, they are my top 5 movies within the DC Cinematic Universe so far. But what are yours? Let me know below. Were there any that you disagreed with me? Is your list completely different? Let me know. Are you looking forward to the Aquaman? I am. I cannot wait for it. I am really looking forward to it. And I look forward to bringing you a review for Aquaman. When it comes to reviews at the moment, it's been a while. As I explained in my previous video, but a lot going on in the last few months. Bought a home, so we moved out from my parents at last with my partner. A new job, or a promotion with work, as well as we've just got ourselves a puppy. So there's been a lot going on. So I haven't quite managed to get around to going to the cinema even, but I'm hoping that, well, that will all change soon. Not quite as fast as I'd like it to, but yeah, I haven't got around to going to the cinema, but I didn't want to stop creating content for you guys. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know what you thought below. And again, thank you for watching so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to see future reviews from me, top 10 lists, top 5 lists, or unboxings and everything geeky, then don't forget to hit subscribe.